What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. It seems like right now the gaming industry is just on fire, and currently people are bracing for impact because more reports are coming out around Microsoft laying off up to 1,000 people. That's the word going around, and some of the studios and even game cancellations being named are kind of unbelievable, but we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony as they are starting to talk more and more about their plans for 2027, which sure could include a PlayStation 6, but also might include the Vita successor. And we also have another Steam Machine story, this one though coming up from a third party, and certainly left everyone kind of scratching their heads as to how all of this went down. But we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Marvel Tokon, as we did have like the final set of characters revealed for this game coming up, of course, in August. But we can see the trailer here, and this was pretty cool. Blade, Deadpool, and Loki. So the thing I like about Marvel Tokon specifically is they're doing a lot of deep cuts with characters, but overall, you look at the roster, while it isn't, of course, Marvel, it kind of looks like a nice, like, mishmash of characters, and I think it just makes the roster very, very interesting because of that. The other part of this is there will be an open beta. Originally, it was kind of like, oh, a closed beta. They did a fun little animation where they sliced that in half. No, open beta, July 24th to the 26th. So we have a few days in there for people to try out the game, and of course for Arc System Works, see how the servers, I'm sure all that stuff holds up as they roll towards their August 6th launch. So again, I'm not the biggest fighting game person, but I do keep looking at this and going, I don't know, maybe that'd be fun to pick up and just kind of play it as sort of like a casual experience, if nothing else, because the characters and honestly the art style, everything else looks really cool. Also, we did get a release date for Oblivion Remastered on the Switch too, and there was one other fun little bit of information that I was not expecting. The game will be fully on the cartridge. It won't be a game key card or anything like that, and that's exciting to see because we're so used to that not being the case. But actually, there's a whole trailer they put out here. Visually speaking, it looks pretty good, I'd say. I mean, this is a game that it struggled a bit on not only on PC, but on current platforms right now with PlayStation and Xbox. On the Switch 2, it will be releasing August 11th. There were some technical details that they shared, which does include the resolution, 900p, 30 FPS in handheld mode, 1080p, 30 FPS docked. Of course, those will be using DLSS and then upscaling and stuff. So I'm sure we'll get some crazy low resolution that is being reconstructed and is able to look pretty good there just based on what NVIDIA is able to accomplish with their chip. Motion controls, touchscreen, mouse controls, all of those will also be available along with the additional downloadable content there. So pretty cool. I mean, it's fun having games like these that are, I don't want to say too big for the Switch 2, but certainly are ones that will test some of the limits on the technical side. So I'm sure we'll get a pretty big breakdown for places like Digital Foundry. And it seems like, at least for now, the Switch 2 is up to the task. So we'll see how that does come August, fully on the cartridge. Oh, and here's a strange one. Another delisting, but not one I was expecting to hear about. Like, you can see, this is over on Nintendo Life. Cruis'n Blast has been delisted from the Switch eShop. And this game is awesome, by the way. If you haven't played it, I guess, hey, there is a physical copy out there because we're not in that all-digital future just yet. But once again, showing some of the drawbacks here. I'm not really sure. Is there like some musical stuff? Does it have to do with licensing around, I guess, the Cruis'n name? Now, we don't have any kind of comment from Raw Thrills, who's the developer behind this title, but it is an absolute shame to see it be delisted in this way. Again, because the game is really fun, and once it's gone digitally, there's only so many physical copies out there to find, which I guess also means that it will probably go up in value. So if you don't have it, sure, it's probably worth picking up now, as I've seen it floating around, at least as of the time of this recording, for like $20 to $30. So probably worth picking up a copy, but we'll also wait and see what, I guess, the developer or publisher has to say about this. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft. Again, many people out there right now bracing for impact going into next week, as it looks like July 6th is when many of these layoffs are expected to be announced and just start to happen. And I think it's going to be something that takes obviously a few days, maybe a couple of weeks to complete fully. But right now, the overall count in terms of jobs affected, I'm seeing 1,000 getting thrown around, like that number. And that is obscene. That would be, I think, the largest, like, just single shot layoff announcement that we've ever seen in gaming. But we'll start at the top here, as we were hearing about all kinds of different games and studios, of course, that we've gone over, but then a few other ones getting thrown around, and even a third party being affected here. Okay, so we'll start here. This is with Tom Warren over on The Verge saying, I understand Microsoft is currently weighing closing at least 5 studios, including the developers behind Marvel's Blade. Sources tell me Microsoft wants to cancel Blade as part of a wave of cost cuts and job losses that are planned for the company's Xbox gaming division. Now, Blade is being made by Arcane. That they already went through a whole thing over there, of course, with what happened with Redfall. But this is the other Arcane that was part of that. And wow, oh, man, canceling Blade would sting pretty bad. They say that Blade was originally supposed to debut later this year, according to sources familiar with the game's development, and they're told the internal ship date for the game slipped to late 2027, and it's also running over budget. I mean, look, is that surprising anymore for these big-time, like, AAA titles? Especially one, let's face it, that's being licensed from Marvel. As we know, the licensing fees for Marvel, just based on some of the leaks we saw, and I know Blade and Spider-Man probably have different price tags in terms of licensing, but you're still using the Marvel name, and with Blade, and it's I don't think it's gonna be cheap. But that said, just based, I know we only saw like a quick teaser trailer when they first made that announcement. I was very curious to see what Arcane would be able to do with Blade. And I mean, right now, man, the Blade fandom needs a win here, okay? Now, at least they are going to have Blade in Marvel Tokon, but having an entire dedicated game around this franchise after everything that's happened with the movie, it would have just been really, really nice to get that kind of a win, at least some sort of release for the fans there. But we can also move over here. This is Jason Schreier at Bloomberg saying Microsoft's Xbox has pulled out of a deal to fund and publish a game with IO Interactive, the maker of Hitman and the recent hit 007 First Light, as it reevaluates investment decisions. Now, IO Interactive did also make a big formal announcement and essentially saying, hey, because of the cancellation, they didn't necessarily name Xbox, but because of this cancellation, they have to kind of reevaluate what is titled or codenamed Project Fantasy. All right, and it seemed like it was going to be a pretty big undertaking here. But because of this, they have to try to seek out other funding or publishing for the game itself, which means the people who, I guess, were there working on it, they have to reevaluate, and yeah, that leads to layoffs because they just don't have any funding now for this project. So the thing that would, be devastating there kind of for Microsoft is if this game went on to be really, really big and is like, wow, Microsoft actually had the publishing on that game and it ended up being this big 20 or 30 million unit seller or something. Now, Bloomberg did also get a response here from Xbox. They say it's taking a fresh look at where we invest, so we're focusing on our highest priorities. That's a spokesperson, a statement to Bloomberg News. The other thing here is it looks like, at least for now, Kojima's OD is safe. This, according to IGN, it says a source familiar with Microsoft's plans indicated Kojima's upcoming horror game remains in the works at Kojima Productions and with Xbox Publishing, even as Microsoft reassesses its video game investments. So obviously, we're looking at next week as probably a bunch of studios being named, closures, maybe some are able to make it out of there and spin off. That would be the best case scenario. But the fact that we're talking about games and studios that were just shown in this Xbox showcase, one, it's pretty clear that they are pivoting quickly within Xbox. Asha Sharma said a 100-day reset, and she's not messing around on that. But to show off things like State of Decay 3 and then hear, oh wow, Undead Labs may be shut down or sold off. Okay. And then we hear about Ninja Theory with Senua. Oh, that might be spun off. And we hear about Double Fine and Compulsion. And I think there were some mention of things of like id. Dude, if id Soft gets announced that they are seeing layoffs, like significant layoffs or just entire closures, that would be nuts. And it right now looks like, hey, if you don't have a game right now that's making money or has like serious draw in the market, Microsoft is looking around like, how necessary is this studio really? Are they going to have a game in the next year or two? If not, maybe we're moving off of them. And that, to me, means, most of their studios are on the table for being cut. And it's pretty clear by the end of this year, Microsoft and their Xbox division is going to look significantly different than what they do right now. And the other part is that it seems like they are making a strong pivot away from the focus being on Game Pass, which means they do just need less studios then because they're looking to release less games. So with that in mind, any studio like a Double Fine who was brought on and kind of directed to make Keeper or Kiln or smaller games with that are more budget conscious, yeah, they were kind of directed incorrectly now for this new leadership coming in, and it's unfortunate, but I think Double Fine, I do believe they could spin off. I think someone out there would be interested in them because they make very, very unique games. Kiln didn't exactly light the world on fire, but I think something like Psychonauts 3 would be really cool to see come to fruition, or just whatever weird ideas they have cooking up within that studio. I like to see studios take shots that don't necessarily conform with the rest of gaming, because that's how we get some of the more interesting titles and ideas thrown around. But for now, I look towards next week. The Verge is mentioning July 6th. So that's most likely to start up, of course, the fiscal year for Microsoft that new week. And that's when the emails and memos start flying. So something tells me we're going to get a whole bunch of them dropped from Bloomberg and The Verge. And I'm sure we'll hear about all kinds of studios closing down. And it's going to be unfortunate. Again, brace for impact going into next week. Next up, let's talk about Sony, as they had an entire Q&A with investors, and they released the transcription of this, and it was with Hideaki Nishino. He talked about a number of different things, but there was one question and answer that I wanted to really focus in on here, as it does talk about their plans for, yes, next generation, but also seems to hint at a handheld device. Okay, so we can see, now this is question 2, and I'll have this link down below in the sources for the entire PDF that they released. The question, considering consumer behavior, could you update us on your current thinking regarding hardware pricing and profitability? For the next generation platform, is it reasonable to assume that your pricing will continue to prioritize profitability of the hardware as it does today? Nishino answers, first, we regard hardware as the base for providing the gaming experience. And by offering products such as the PlayStation Portal Remote Player, PS Portal, just random thing to just kind of name here, right? Goes on to say, we aim to provide experiences tailored to users' playstyles beyond the living room, which has traditionally been considered the primary usage environment. As for pricing, it is not realistic for us to absorb all component cost increases, and we have already implemented some price increases outside of Japan. At present, however, sales are proceeding as planned, and we do not believe this has led to a decline in customer demand. As a principle, we do not intend to sell hardware at significant losses. At the same time, we are carefully monitoring the market and continue to evaluate our approach. So again, it seems like they do mention, they bring up the PlayStation Portal, they bring up experiences beyond the living room, and we hear about this Vita successor handheld in the works. I think you can put 2 and 2 together. I'm expecting a new handheld from Sony, potentially at the end of next year, like holiday 2027, and I don't necessarily think it has to align with their next generation plans with the PlayStation 6, because I think most people right now, with the PlayStation Portal, many people looked at it and said, yeah, but you got to stream, or yeah, you got to remote play. I kind of want it to be a native experience. So I think if they just showed up and said, hey, here is the new PlayStation Portable, it plays your PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 games, and then whatever other titles you have on PlayStation Plus for the classics catalog, and it just works natively, and it's like a 3-hour battery life, and it's 1080p screen, and I think most people will be happy with that, without them ever mentioning PlayStation 6 stuff. So if the PS6 fell into 2028, yeah, I say go for it, release the thing, 2027, that being the handheld, and roll forward with that. Okay, so the other part, they're saying they're not going to take significant losses going forward. That's not their plan for next generation. That's kind of what they're implying here. And people looked at it and said, oh, they're not taking losses. They're not going to subsidize anything. I read that as they're not going to subsidize significantly. As in, yeah, I think they will still subsidize next generation devices, and that would include the handheld, which the handheld is probably the easiest one to subsidize, because I don't know if anyone expects them to come to the table with a new cartridge format or have you put Blu-rays in it. It's going to be an all-digital device. Like, I think most of us figure that right now. So with that in mind, you buy the handheld and you're locked into their PlayStation Store. So they can go, oh, every time we sell that, you're buying from us directly. So it makes sense to try to get the hardware at least down a little bit if we can. And by the way, I say a little bit. If you look at the PC gaming handheld space right now, if this device launched at $800, but it's significantly more capable than the near $800 Steam Deck that would be right next to it, yeah, that would probably be a fair price for that market. PC gaming handhelds obviously exceed well over $1,000 now, with that MSI device being, what, $1,800? So yeah, $800 is, people might look at that and go, oh, okay, that's not too bad. I mean, honestly, the Switch 2 might be $600 by next holiday with the way that all of this is trending, but they would probably have to subsidize that. Okay, maybe by like $100 or something. The PlayStation 6, if they get it out at $1,000, they're subsidizing that even. Seriously, I mean, it might be $1,200 by the time we get to holiday 27 at this rate, and maybe if it falls into 28, they could be subsidizing at $1,200. So I do think they are going to work to try to keep the price as low as they can in a market that seems to only want to push those prices up higher and higher, just based on RAM and storage costs alone. But hey, if nothing else, a handheld, that could be kind of fun. What could they have up their sleeves after the Vita? Well, hopefully a system that they find is a success and they can continue on rather than take a long hiatus. It's interesting to see how Sony creates a sleek handheld, which I think they will in this current climate with all the technological leaps that we've seen. So here's hoping that that's something they at least go forward with for 27, even if the PS6 maybe needs to find its way into the next year. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Steam Machine and Dbrand with one of the strangest situations I've seen in a while, and I'll explain why here in a moment, but they had this companion cube case, which was a fun idea. You know, companion cube from Portal. It's like, hey, it's fun. You can put it around the Steam Machine. It'll still be able to breathe, but it looks like a little companion cube. Great. Until Valve, I guess, got wind of this and the lawyers got involved. Okay, so Dbrand had to issue a statement and it popped up on their subreddit here, where they say, the blunt version is that we made the companion cube without a license from Valve. Everyone who purchased a companion cube will have their refund issued by end of day. They explain a little bit here saying, over the next 7 months after putting out this kind of joke like message showing it off, they said, we poured our souls into this project. More than 1,000 hours went into engineering from our industrial design team. 44 sets of injection molding tools were developed, one for each of the cube subcomponents. Valve's legal team reached out. This is after they started to announced it, started doing pre-orders, and they stated that the companion cube is Valve intellectual property for which Dbrand does not have a license. They requested we take down the product and launch film immediately. This was entirely within their rights, and they were direct, fair, and respectful throughout. So, my thing with this is they mentioned they spent 7 months, 1,000 hours into engineering, and apparently at no point in time, like no one in the room went, hey, should we have a lawyer look over this? No, instead they spent a good part of a year, more than half a year, R&Ding this thing only to have it shut down. So it's very strange that they got all the way to the finish line and they were like, oh, wow, Valve doesn't want us to sell something that has their intellectual property. I mean, honestly, I saw that at first and I was wondering, wait a minute, because I think it was in, I think Linus had it in his video. I went, oh, that's cool. Valve's doing a companion cube thing. No, it actually wasn't them. So you can kind of see some of the confusion that could also ensue with that. So yeah, it kind of makes sense why Valve would come in and go, yeah, we're not doing that because, well, if people have issues with it since they're putting it around their Steam machine that we're selling, guess who they're probably going to contact for customer support? Most likely the Valve hotlines will be lighting up or people will be contacting through their like chatbot on Steam and not necessarily going directly to Dbrand because it looked pretty official right away. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday where I ask, if you have a Switch 2, do you notice the LCD ghosting in handheld mode? 85% just say no, 15% say yes. And I did see some people in the comments go, I don't actually play my Switch 2 handheld, like it's never left my dock. Yeah, I mean, if you just play it docked, you're never going to notice the LCD ghosting, so that makes sense. Others say there were some spots, different games. So fast platforming games, you can notice it with your character on screen. So like just take Mario and start running across the level and you can see a trail behind him. But then other games, maybe where it's not as noticeable, it could be a lower frame rate. For example, like 30 FPS, a first-person shooter might be harder to notice. So it definitely comes down to, again, sensitivity, to the idea of the screen being a bit slower, or just the kind of experiences that you have with your Switch 2. But either way, I still like Nintendo to work out a fix, even for the 15% of people who notice it. That's me pretty disappointing for what's soon to be a $500 handheld, but very well could be even more expensive than that in 2027. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Tyler, who says he brought up the Stellar Blade demo. They also did it with the PT demo and then had a fit when people were selling consoles at a markup that had the demo. So I do remember that with the PT demo. Got Konami went their whole thing. There were the Kojima breakup. It was very famous, and Konami was pretty petty at that point, and they didn't want the PT demo anywhere. They pulled it down, they ripped it out of people's libraries, and it was a big deal if you had a PlayStation 4 that had the PT demo, to the point where it was marked up, I think almost 2 to 3 times the amount of what a PS4 was selling for new back then. Currently, if you do modify your PS4, which is very easy if you're on like not even a super old firmware, one from maybe a year or two ago, you can load up PT no problem. The demo is a couple gigabytes maybe in file size. You transfer it over and it plays fine. And you can even like overclock and do some other stuff with your PS4 for PT to make it run better and stuff. It's kind of interesting to go back because that demo is still like a one-of-one experience. It is so interesting. So it is kind of a shame that Konami ripped it down, but I guess at least there's a way to experience it. You just have to hack up your PS4, soft mod your PS4 at least a little bit, or I don't know, are they still on eBay? Go find one for like $1,000. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you wanted to hear more about how Sony is, it has some serious issues going on right now heading into next generation, mostly because the PlayStation 6 and the current climate is a problem for them. I did a video looking over this, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.